I'm Jessica Davis, 32, and 3 weeks ago my father turned his retirement party into a public execution of my dignity. Picture the scene: the Fairfield Country Club, 200 of the elite and designer silk champagne flowing like water. My father, Thomas Davis, stood on stage, microphone in hand. He introduced his perfect stepfamily, then turned that shark-like smile toward me. "And this," he announced, "is Jessica. No degree, no future, just a professional freeloader." The room exploded in laughter. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I simply raised my glass and said, "Cheers, this is the last time you'll ever see me." I walked out into the night, knowing something he didn't: the worthless daughter he just mocked secretly owns the company that keeps his business alive. Before I tell you how I brought him to his knees, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Where in the world are you listening to this story from right now? Now let me take you back 12 years to the day my future was stolen. To the outside world, the Davis family of Fairfield, Connecticut, was the picture of American success. My father, Thomas Davis, was the CEO of a mid-sized logistics empire. We had the colonial mansion, the country club membership, and the luxury cars. But inside that house, I wasn't a daughter. I was a ghost. My mother passed away when I was 8, cancer quick and brutal. 2 years later, my father married Patricia. She arrived with her son Brandon, who was 3 years older than me. Almost overnight, the dynamic shifted. Brandon became the golden child, the heir apparent. I became furniture. I wasn't beaten or starved. Nothing that dramatic. I was simply erased. Brandon got the new BMW at 16. I got his hand-me-downs. Brandon got praised for a C+. My straight A's were met with silence. The defining moment, the moment that truly broke me, happened when I was 20. I was a sophomore in college, a business major with a 3.8 GPA. I had dreams. I had a scholarship application for a summer program in London sitting on my desk. Then my father called a family meeting. I walked into his study, the air thick with the smell of old leather and expensive cologne. Patricia was standing behind him, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. My father didn't even look up from his papers. "Jessica," he started, his voice flat, "we need to make some sacrifices. Brandon has been accepted into an MBA program. It's a massive opportunity for the family legacy." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "Okay. We can't afford both your tuition and his program," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "So you're going to take a break from school, just for now. We need to prioritize Brandon's career." I sat there frozen. "But you promised Mom. You said my education was secure," Patricia chimed in, then her voice dripping with that fake sugary sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey, don't be dramatic. A girl doesn't need a business degree to have a good life. You're pretty. You'll find a nice husband to take care of you. That's what really matters." I looked at my father, waiting for him to defend me. He just shrugged. "Circumstances changed, Jessica." That was the day I realized I was alone. Well, almost alone. There was one person who actually saw me: my grandmother Elizabeth. She was the only one who whispered, "Don't let them break you," during Sunday dinners. But at 20 years old, with my tuition cut off and my dreams crushed, I didn't know yet that Grandma Elizabeth had a plan, one that would eventually give me the power to destroy everything they were building. I moved to Boston with $2,000 in savings and a suitcase full of designer clothes that belonged to a life I could no longer afford. My first apartment was a 400-square-foot studio above a 24-hour laundromat in Allston. The radiator clanked like a dying engine all night. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's TV, and dinner was instant ramen 5 nights a week. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom: it gives you a solid foundation to build on. I got a job as an administrative assistant at a small shipping firm, entry-level, minimum wage. My boss saw me as a quiet girl who made good coffee. He had no idea I was staying until 9 p.m. every night, teaching myself the industry. I devoured free online courses, supply chain management operations, business law. The internet became my university. I didn't call home. I didn't ask for a dime. When my father's secretary sent a generic birthday card signed with a stamp and a check for $50, I tore it up and threw it in the trash. That silence was my first act of independence. 2 years after I left Connecticut, my grandmother Elizabeth passed away. She was the only person in that house who had ever looked at me with kindness. I flew down for the funeral, sat in the back row, and left before the reception. A week later, I received a call from a lawyer in Boston I'd never heard of. Grandma Elizabeth had established a secret trust fund for me 8 years prior. She knew. She had watched my father sideline me for years, and she had quietly prepared a safety net. The trust contained $800,000 legally structured so that Thomas Davis couldn't touch a single cent. She left a note too. It read, "Use this to build the life you deserve. Don't let them define your worth. I believe in you." I didn't buy a condo. I didn't buy a car. I used that money to launch Summit Solutions. I started small, just me, a laptop, and a rented desk in a co-working space. But I had one strict rule: absolute anonymity. No face on the website, no personal LinkedIn profile. All business went through the company name and my legal team. Why? Because I knew my family. If they saw me succeeding, they would either try to take credit for it or tear it down. Fast forward to today. Summit Solutions has 15 employees and generates $4 million in annual revenue. We specialize in logistics optimization. Basically, we save companies money by fixing their messy supply chains. And here is the part that would be funny if it weren't so tragic. One of our biggest, most dependent clients is Davis Logistics. My father's company signed a 5-year service contract with us 3 years ago. We handle their route optimization and warehouse management. Our work accounts for about 40% of their operational efficiency. If we pulled the plug, their margins would collapse overnight. My father has no idea. All communications go through my account managers. The few times Thomas Davis has praised Summit Solutions at industry events, calling us visionary and the backbone of his operations, he has been praising his own daughter's work. The same daughter he calls worthless. I kept the secret because I wanted to succeed on my own merit. I wanted to prove I could build an empire without his name. But as I sat there at his retirement party, listening to him mock me to a room full of strangers, I realized that business was about to get very personal. The contract was up for renewal, and I finally knew exactly what I was going to do. The drive back to Boston that night was silent, but my mind was loud. My phone buzzed incessantly on the passenger seat, texts from Patricia, "You need help," angry voicemails from Brandon, "You embarrassed us," and silence from my father. They thought I had run away to cry in my studio apartment. They had no idea I was driving back to my headquarters to burn their kingdom down. Monday morning, the atmosphere in my office at Summit Solutions was electric. I called my CFO Daniel into the conference room. Daniel was the only one who knew the full story. He sat down, sliding a tablet across the mahogany table. "You're not going to believe this," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Davis Logistics sent over the renewal contract this morning. They're desperate, Jessica. They're offering a 15% rate increase to lock us in for another 5 years. They know their infrastructure can't survive without our optimization software." I looked at the numbers. It was a fortune. A life-changing amount of profit. But looking at it all, I could hear was my father's voice echoing in that ballroom. "No degree, no future. Freeloader." "Reject it," I said calmly. Daniel paused. "You know what this means for them. If we walk away, they lose 40% of their operational efficiency within 60 days. In this market, that's not a stumble. That's a death spiral." "I know," I replied. "Draft the termination letter. Give them the standard 30-day notice per the contract. Keep it professional. Strategic repositioning. That's all they need to know officially." But I wasn't done. The business termination was for the CEO. The next part was for the father. I sat alone in my office and wrote a personal letter. I went through 7 drafts. The first was too angry, the second too sad. The final version was cold, clean, and devastatingly factual. Dear Dad, you told 200 people I was worthless. You said I had no future. I want you to know something. The company you have called the backbone of your operations for the last 3 years, Summit Solutions, is mine. I built it. I own it. I am the sole shareholder. For 3 years, the daughter you dismissed as a failure has been the one keeping your business afloat. Grandma Elizabeth knew. She left me a trust fund you couldn't touch, and I used it to build the empire you now rely on. I'm not ending our contract out of revenge. I'm ending it as a boundary. I don't need your money. I don't need your approval. I just needed you to know that I am not who you said I was. I never was. Goodbye, Jessica Elizabeth Davis. I sealed the letter in a thick cream-colored envelope and attached a photocopy of Summit Solutions Incorporation papers with my name clearly listed as owner/CEO. I sent both the official termination notice and the personal letter via private courier requiring a signature. Tuesday morning at 10:15 a.m., my phone alerted me, package delivered, signed by T. Davis. I sat back in my chair and watched the clock. It took exactly 4 minutes. At 10:19 a.m., my phone began to ring. It was my father, then Brandon, then Patricia, then the Davis Logistics main line. I didn't answer. I just watched the screen light up over and over again. The silence I had endured for 12 years was finally over. Now it was their turn to listen to the consequences. By 2 p.m., my receptionist buzzed my intercom, her voice tinged with confusion. Ms. Davis, there are 3 people in the lobby demanding to see you. They say they're family. They had driven 5 hours from Connecticut to Boston in a panic. I didn't jump up. I didn't run out to greet them. I finished the email I was typing, took a sip of water, and checked my reflection in the monitor. I looked like a CEO. I looked like someone who owned her life. Show them to conference room B, I said. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Conference room B has floor-to-ceiling glass walls overlooking the Boston Harbor. It's a power room. When I walked in, the 3 of them, Thomas, Patricia, and Brandon, were huddled near the window looking out at a city they didn't belong in. They looked small. That was my first thought. The giants of my childhood had shrunk. My father turned around. His face was a shade of gray I'd never seen before. Jessica, he croaked. What is this? Hello, Dad. Patricia. Brandon. I took the seat at the head of the table. I assume you got my letter. Brandon slammed his hand on the table. You can't just cancel the contract. Do you have any idea what this does to us? We have quarterly targets. We have shareholders. Sit down, Brandon. I said, my voice low and steady. It wasn't a request. He sat. This is a misunderstanding. My father started switching to his boardroom persona, calm, reasonable gaslighting. The party. I was trying to be funny, Jessica. You know my sense of humor. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but destroying the family business over a joke, that's petty. I leaned forward. It wasn't a joke, Dad. It was exactly how you see me. You told 200 people I was a freeloader. I'm just correcting the record. I'm not a freeloader. I'm your vendor, and as a vendor, I have the right to fire a toxic client. We can fix this, Patricia interjected, her eyes darting nervously. We're family. We can negotiate. There is no negotiation, I said. The contract ends in 30 days. My father's eyes narrowed. The nice guy mask slipped off. If you walk away, you are cut off. You hear me? No inheritance, no family support. You will be dead to us. I almost laughed. Dad, you cut me off 12 years ago. You just didn't have the guts to say it to my face. And as for inheritance, I slid a folder across the table. Inside was a copy of the trust fund documents Grandma Elizabeth had left me. Grandma Elizabeth left me $800,000. She structured it specifically so you couldn't touch it because she knew exactly who you were. She knew you'd try to control me with money, so she made sure I'd never need yours. My father stared at the papers, his hands shaking. He looked at the signature, his own mother's handwriting. He realized then that he hadn't just lost a daughter. He had been outsmarted by the two women he had underestimated the most. "You have no right," he whispered. "I have every right." I stood up. "This meeting is over. Security will show you out. If you contact me again, if you show up at my home, or if you disparage my company in the press, I will release every email and every financial record showing exactly how dependent Davis Logistics is on my technology. I don't think your shareholders would like that." I walked to the door and held it open. One by one, they filed out. Brandon looked terrified. Patricia looked defeated. And my father. He couldn't even look me in the eye. As the elevator doors closed on their faces, I didn't feel sad. I felt weightless. I thought the confrontation in my office was the end. I thought I had closed the book. But the universe had one last secret to reveal, a secret that would turn my anger into absolute cold clarity. 3 days after I kicked my family out, my phone rang. It was my Uncle David. David was my father's younger brother, the black sheep artist who had distanced himself from the family years ago. "Jessica," his voice was rough, heavy with guilt. "I heard what happened. I heard you finally stood up to him." "I did, Uncle David. It's over." "It's not over," he said. "There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you 12 years ago. But I was too much of a coward to go against Thomas." I pulled my car over to the side of the road. "What are you talking about?" "When you were forced to leave college. When Thomas said the family was broke." David took a deep breath. "That was a lie. A complete fabrication. Your mother, before she passed, she set up an education fund specifically for you. It was fully funded, enough for 4 years at UConn, maybe even grad school." My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "What happened to the money?" "Thomas raided it," David whispered. "He drained your mother's legacy to pay for Brandon's MBA and that new Mercedes. He stole your future to buy his stepson a career. Grandma Elizabeth found out, that's why she set up the secret trust. She couldn't get your mother's money back, but she swore she'd give you a fighting chance." I sat there for a long time watching the rain hit the windshield. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. It wasn't just neglect, it was theft. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a calculated erasure of my mother's wishes. In the months that followed, I didn't have to lift a finger to destroy them. The truth has a funny way of doing the heavy lifting for you. News of the contract termination hit the grapevine. Then the rumors started. Fairfield is a small town wrapped in money. People talk. The story of the retirement party, the cruel speech, the daughter walking out, merged with the revelation that the daughter was actually the owner of the company's biggest partner. My father's reputation disintegrated. He wasn't seen as a savvy businessman anymore. He was the man who cannibalized his own child and lost his company because of it. Investors got nervous. Clients walked away. Brandon, overwhelmed and underqualified, couldn't stop the bleeding. Davis Logistics downsized by 30% that winter. They are still afloat, barely a shadow of the empire they used to be. I stopped checking up on them. I had a life to live. Last week I visited Grandma Elizabeth's grave. I placed white lilies on the stone, her favorite. I stood there in the quiet of the cemetery, feeling the cool breeze on my face. I wasn't the broken 20-year-old girl anymore. I wasn't the invisible daughter. I realized something profound standing there. My father thought he was punishing me all those years. He thought he was breaking me. But by stripping everything away, he gave me the greatest gift of all. He forced me to find my own strength. So here is the lesson, if you need one. Your worth is not a diploma. It is not an inheritance. And it is certainly not the opinion of people who are too blind to see you. Your worth is what you build with your own 2 hands when the world isn't watching. I'm Jessica Davis. I built my empire from the ashes of their rejection, and for the first time in my life, I am truly completely free. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to walk away from family to save yourself, I want you to know you aren't alone and you aren't wrong. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And subscribe for more stories of truth and resilience. Until next time.